So this is the one fear that if you have, you will overcome most of the fears that we get to face today, especially the most common ones like the fear of people, that desire to please people, your inability to say no, terror, and some anxieties. If you have this fear at work on the inside of you, fully at work, it will overcome all of those fears. This is like one way to beat most of your fears. And let me explain. So, in our devotional today, we're talking about Obadiah. And no, I'm not talking about the prophet. I'm talking about this Obadiah that was like the administrator of the house of Ahab. You remember Ahab? Ahab was the king that in his time, if you wanted to spell evil, you spell it with his name. He was the husband of Jezebel. And it's not as if Jezebel was the one that started his wickedness. Jezebel was like the icing on top of the cake, like the decoration of his wicked. It was the amplifier of his wickedness. The Bible says that as if all the evil that Ahab did was not enough, he married Jezebel. That's what Nyerejara on top of the evil by marrying Jezebel. Jezebel in this time that we're talking about was killing prophets because she's a priestess of Baal. So she wanted to replace the worship where they are worshiping God. They should be worshiping her own God as queen. She was trying to eliminate all prophets of God and put prophets of Baal in the place. Now, in this time, with this wicked queen, Obadiah decided to take 100 prophets of God and keep them. And he was giving them food, bread and water. Obadiah was not afraid of this Jezebel, this one your jaw, and what will happen to him if he was caught. Obadiah was not afraid. And do you know why? Because the Bible says that Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. Like, he didn't fear the Lord one thing small, un peu. He feared the Lord greatly. The fear of the Lord on the inside of him overcame the fear of Jezebel, overcame the fear of him dying, overcame the fear of him conforming. He saw that the prophets were going to be killed, and he said, I have to do the right thing. I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to take the risk. I don't care how it turns out. And he decides to take these prophets and go and hide them. And there are three things we can learn from this, and I hope I'm able to explain it in this short video. First is that in the midst of all of the worshiping of Baal and the rebellion of Israel, Obadiah was the one that was separate. The fear of the Lord on the inside of him did not allow him to conform to anything or to anyone. He stayed true to God, even though the culture was not true to God. And that is a risk in this time because that meant life or death. It's not like today where you are worshiping God and you are boogie boogie and nobody is threatening your life. They are just threatening small. They are making you feel bad. That's the highest threat we face. Our life is not on the line. But Obadiah's life will be on the line if he comes out boldly to speak of God right under Jezebel's nose. But he feared the Lord greatly, and he stood for what was right. Secondly, he didn't need to wait to hear a voice from heaven to come and tell him, Obadiah, save the prophet. God has instructed you. No. The fear of the Lord on the inside of him gave him the courage to do what was right. He saw that it was wrong that the prophets were being killed. And he said, what can I do? What can I do? And he risked. Oh, Jesus. He risked his life to save this prophet. He risked everything, put himself on the line to save this prophet. He wasn't waiting for a thought said the Lord. Some of us, until God raised his voice and speak, my child, do this, do that, we won't do what is right. But he has spoken in his word, documented, written for us what is right and what is wrong. And we ought to know what we ought to do and what we're not supposed to do. And the fear of the Lord on the inside of yourself is a compass to tell you this is right and this is wrong. And Obadiah followed that fear of God that was on the inside of him. I don't know how many of you that you are seeing what is right there to do, but you are threatened. You are thinking that if I put my mouth, waiting no concern me, I'll be risking myself, I'll be risking my business. Do what is right. You don't need God to raise trumpets. No, come and do this before you do. Do what is right. That's what the fear of the Lord does on the inside of you. It eliminates every other form of fear. The one that is making you to call abundance. The fear of the Lord eliminates it. Number 3, God preserved him. You see, when you are doing the right thing, guess what happens? God preserves you. Because God knows how to protect those that are going seriously on his way. Ask Daniel. Ask the Hebrew boys. Ask them. Even ask all the what is the name, all the apostles until it was their time to die. Ask them all the time that they were preaching. Even Jesus, until it was his time to lay his life, they could not do anything to him. They couldn't catch him. God preserves and protects his own. So if you are risking your life doing what is right or doing what God has asked you to do, God will protect and preserve you. But guess what? You're going to have to take courage and do it first to experience and enjoy that protection. You're not going to be sitting down in the place of comfort and just resting, not wanting to risk yourself and think that you will benefit of the preservation of those who risk themselves. God bless you.